Have you ever felt that you were living in the Matrix? Have you ever felt like you awoke to a dark truth of what reality really is, of how things really are? And do the people around you sometimes seem like they are ostriches with their heads buried in the sand? Well, with the complete inundation of government lies and corporate media propaganda, it's easy to understand why most people live in blissful ignorance. So this all reminds me of my favorite story, something that I learned studying philosophy that completely rings parallel to today's world. Plato's fictional dialogue, The Allegory of the Cave, and it goes like this. Imagine a dark cave where prisoners have lived their entire existence facing nothing but a blank wall. The prisoners are chained to be completely immobile. Behind the prisoners is a walkway that separates them from a giant burning fire. The fire casts shadows onto the wall of objects and people that pass through the walkway. Now, the prisoners cannot see the walkway or the people carrying these objects. All they can see are the shadows. These shadows that they see are all that make up the prisoners' reality. All of their culture and knowledge is entirely based on what the shadows do. In the same way that we preoccupy our lives with mindless entertainment, waiting for hours in traffic, sitting in a cubicle, staring at a computer screen, doing something we loathe, and stuffing our faces with garbage. And we do all of this believing that there's no alternative, that life is nothing more than that. Well, one day, someone from the real world, one of the people who normally cast these shadows onto the wall, decides to enter the cave and free a prisoner. He unshackles him and tells him to come outside of the cave. When the prisoner complies, he's at first blinded by the sun and then horrified by the realization that his entire reality is nothing more than an illusion. So Plato then poses a question that is a personal challenge innate within us all. When after getting a glimpse of an ugly truth and scary reality, would you choose to go back to blissful ignorance? Would you be scared of the personal responsibility that will inevitably come with the truth? Or would you pursue it, no matter how horrifying it may be? Realities such as accepting the fact that this government kills its own people. It sacrifices us to advance an agenda of global control, military dominance, corporate profit. Those are the realities that so many people choose to be blinded from. Dark truths like Operation Northwoods, a government plan drafted to stage an attack and kill Americans to preempt a Cuban invasion in the 60s. JFK assassination, 9/11, or the fact that what the government tells us is safe to eat is really killing us. Or how about the fact that the corporatocracy rapes and pillages the earth simply for profit, without a care for the fate of humanity or this precious environment? And that the establishment pushes religion and political dogma onto us to stifle a collective consciousness from growing, one that may phase them out. But ultimately, finding the truth is up to you. It's a decision you have to make, and nothing else will ever be more important than this decision. So, do you shackle down your mind and subscribe to old school paradigms? Or do you liberate yourself by acknowledging reality? Sure, the world would lose its innocence, but wouldn't you rather know the truth? Remember the Maine? No, seriously, do you remember the Maine? The phrase refers to that massive explosion that sank one of America's first battleships, stationed in Havana, Cuba, killing 260 U.S. sailors on board. Today marks the 115th anniversary of that event. At the time, the Navy officially stated that the ship was blown up by a mine. And while they didn't place the blame directly on Spain, Congress left little doubt that the Spanish were in fact responsible for the explosion. The sinking of the Maine, coupled with U.S. criticism of Spain's control over Cuba, were all the ingredients necessary to start the Spanish-American War. The war lasted only a few months, ending with a ceasefire in the Treaty of Paris. However, an overlooked aspect of this treaty is that it officially granted the U.S. government its first overseas empire, having acquired the territories of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, formerly in the possession of Spain. But if we want to truly give justice to the memory of the Maine, we should consider all the facts. See, in 1976, American naval investigators concluded that the inferno that sank the Maine and killed more than half its crew was caused by the ship's ammunition stockpile igniting. The investigation proved once and for all that the Spanish were not to blame. Isn't it interesting that an entire war could be launched against another country based entirely on false pretenses? Well, we're no strangers to this notion of starting wars on lies. One just has to look at the Iraq War to see that this is a common occurrence. But did you know that there's actually a long history of governments staging events or provocations and blaming them entirely on other countries in order to provide a pretext for war? They're called false flag attacks. And according to its naval warfare origins, a false flag attack occurs when a government uses an elite special operations cadre to attack that nation state while falsely bearing the flag of another country or group. In other words, it's a self-inflicted wound used to outrage the populace and provide the necessary support and motivation for a country to attack or declare war. In fact, falsehoods seem to be at the heart of every major war of aggression throughout history. But I'll just go over a few more. Remember how the U.S. became embroiled in the Vietnam War? Well, in 1964, President Johnson reported that 3 Vietnamese boats attacked 2 U.S. warships in the Gulf of Tonkin off the Vietnamese coast. Newspapers, including the Washington Post and New York Times, among countless other publications, ran headlines about the attack, which helped to galvanize the public to support the U.S. to enter the war. I don't blame the public for supporting retaliation against a country attacking their own. However, there's one slight problem with the story. It simply is false. Literally, it never happened. It was a made-up event, which took decades to come to light. A false flag event might be a foreign notion to you. You might be grappling with the fact that this country would kill its own citizens to advance an agenda. But one has to look no further than what former Defense Secretary Robert McNamara under JFK proposed under a now declassified document known as Operation Northwoods. Northwoods is probably one of the most sinister plans ever devised, at least that we know of. And it was aimed at developing a way to trick the American public and the international community into supporting a war for Cuba. Based on the document, it was revealed that the U.S. forces would be authorized to use, quote, pretexts which would provide justification for U.S. military intervention in Cuba. The most alarming aspect of this was the disturbing scope to which these pretexts entailed. See for yourself. They included starting rumors using clandestine radio, landing friendly Cubans in uniform over the fence to stage attacks on base, capturing Cuban saboteurs inside the base, starting riots, blowing up ammunition, starting fires, burning aircrafts, lobbing mortar shells, capturing militia groups, sabotaging and sinking ships, and conducting mock funerals for mock victims. The extent of this false flag proposition even went as far as to hijack American aircrafts and blow up a NASA rocket carrying an astronaut. Luckily, Kennedy had enough sense to reject the plan. But what if other presidents aren't like Kennedy? You know, many people look at the events of 9/11 in that same light, and I myself still have many questions about the attacks, seen as how they were used to create perpetual war abroad and a police state here at home. Do you think Bush and Cheney had Kennedy's sense? Do you think Obama does?
Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? Can the federal government take credit for saving us from a plot of its own creation? Tonight, has the federal government kept us safe, or does it just want us to think that it has kept us safe? Since the tragedy of 9/11, numerous crazies and low-level copycats have engaged in criminal behavior which they hoped would result in the deaths of innocent Americans and somehow advance their cause of jihad. If you ask the leadership of the FBI, most of whose field agents are tireless, dedicated, Constitution-supporting professionals, it will tell you that the FBI, has foiled about 17 plots to kill Americans during the past 10 years. What it will not tell you is that there have been 20 foiled plots, and of them, 3 were interrupted by members of the public. The 17 that were interrupted by the feds were created by the feds. We all remember the 3 that were foiled by diligent Americans: the shoe bomber, the underwear bomber, and the Times Square bomber. In all of these cases, the crimes charged were those of attempting to kill and conspiring with others to do so. In all 3 of those cases, alert Americans on continental flights or in the streets of New York City told authorities of bizarre behavior or actually subdued the threats themselves. There was no foiling by the FBI. The plotters were, thankfully, bumbling fools who had poorly planned their criminal behavior and who ended up harming no one. All 3 are serving life terms. But the more curious cases are the remaining 17, for which the federal government has taken credit. They all have a common and reprehensible thread. They were planned, plotted, controlled, and carried out by the federal government itself. In all of these 17 cases, from the Fort Dix 6 to the Lackawanna 7 to the Portland parade bomber, the feds found young men of Muslim backgrounds, loners who were bitter at America. They befriended them, cajoled them, and persuaded them that they could change the world by killing Americans. In all these cases, agents worked undercover and portrayed themselves to the targets as Arabs of like un-American mind. In some cases, the federal agents used third parties to act as middlemen. The third parties were typically persons who had been convicted of crimes and who, in return for leniency at their own sentencings, were willing to work with the same feds who prosecuted them in order to help the feds entrap whomever else those feds were pursuing. Thus, in all 17 of these cases, because of the command and control of federal agents, no one was ever in danger, no one was harmed, no bomb went off, and no property was damaged. But in all those cases, the losers whom the feds targeted each believed that they were interacting with real plotters who would bring them cash and bombs. As we know, sometimes the cash arrived, but the bombs never did. The defendants were essentially charged and convicted for playing a game with federal agents. The most recent of those government-generated plots was revealed yesterday. It has a new twist because it allegedly involves agents of the intelligence apparatus of the government of Iran. It, too, was destined to go nowhere, as the feds monitored and taped every move made by their target as he interacted with federal agents whom he stupidly believed to be drug dealers and co-conspirators. Today, the feds themselves revealed that high officials of Iran's government knew nothing of this. Of course, the neocons have demanded bombs on Tehran, no matter what the government there knew. And this plot came to light the day before Attorney General Holder himself was subpoenaed by Congress in the Fast and Furious case. You get the picture. Are any of these plots criminal? Can the government just pick and choose whom to seduce and then lower the boom at the right time and arrest its would-be Confederates? Is this a proper and efficient use of law enforcement resources? The answers to these questions are obvious, and they are not good. The courts have made this legal, so long as the target of these plots had a mental predisposition to cause harm. But none of this keeps us safe. All of this makes us less free, as any one of us can be entrapped. And we are fools if we praise the government for exposing a plot of its own creation and saving us from a danger that never existed. Can the government break the law in order to enforce it? Well, when it does, it becomes a law unto itself, and the rule of law dies as the feds decide whom to target and whom to trap. Think about it. Are we really safe in a false sense of security? Why do we pay the government to trick us into believing it is keeping us safe? When no one is harmed and the government controls the plot, aren't we just punishing someone for his thoughts? And in a free society, aren't free people free to think as they wish? This must be so, because if the government can punish our thoughts, there are no limits to its power. From New York, defending freedom every night of the week. So long, America.
Celebrities have a huge role and responsibility in the resolution of this tyranny because they have money and they have a large following of people who will listen to them.
Sheen normally gets laughs as The Bachelor on the hit CBS sitcom 2.5 Men.
Wow. You're even better than a dog.
But now, Sheen is courting controversy by questioning the official story on 9/11.
Is it a theory, or you just don't believe the government account of what happened on 9/11?
I just had questions.
Yeah?
I had a lot of questions. And the forum I chose to voice those questions in is the Alex Jones radio show.
Mm-hmm.
And just because he's a guy that I've been a fan of and followed for a lot of years. And, I got attacked. And then when the buildings came down, later on that day, I was with my brother, and I said, hey, call me insane, but did it sort of look like those buildings came down in a controlled demolition?
Sheen is also questioning how a commercial airliner could have hit the Pentagon.
Show us this incredible maneuvering. Just show it to us. Just show us, how this particular plane pulled off these maneuvers. What was it, a 270-degree turn at 500 miles an hour, descending 7,000 feet in 2.5 minutes, skimming across the treetops, the last 500 meters, 4 feet off the ground. I felt that the only real validation I needed was just being a tax-paying American that loves my country.
Yeah, and it's just something that you wonder about, and you would like to know more about it, I assume. And do you study the tapes?
I've done a lot of research, and it's not just me, it's the people that have come before me, the experts and the engineers and the physicists and the scientists and the scholars that raised a lot of these things, and I took a look at their research and said, yeah, it doesn't add up. A lot of it doesn't add up, hence these questions.
This is Tom DeLonge from Angels and Airwaves. When you kind of piece apart the way the buildings exploded, it seemed to echo the way big buildings are demolition. We can describe that 2 weeks before 9/11, there was teams of people that were entering the World Trade Center doing things that were unknown to most, shutting off the security systems and whatnot. We do know that the buildings were made to withstand incendiary temperatures thousands of degrees more than what was happening when it all went down. We do know that the buildings came down in a fashion extremely similar to a controlled demolition of a building. There's no possible way that it could have happened the way they describe. And we're talking about 60-70% of the American people are actually starting to think that there's a different story. Why are we, as Americans, sitting back and letting this happen to us? I think that this is a huge challenge for Americans to not let them be defined this way, and to actually stand up and do something that can not only better our own life, but better the world.
In America, we are fed propaganda, and if you want to know what's happening in the world, go outside of the U.S. media, because it's owned by 4 corporations. One of them is this one. And you know what? Go outside of the country to find out what's going on in our own country, because it's frightening. I do believe that it is the first time in history that fire has ever melted steel. I do believe that it defies physics for the World Trade Center Tower 7, Building 7, which collapsed in on itself. It is impossible for a building to fall the way it fell without explosives being involved. World Trade Center 7. World Trader 1 and 2 got hit by planes. 7, miraculously, the first time in history, steel was melted by fire. It is physically impossible.
And who do you think is responsible for that?
I have no idea. But to say that we don't know that it imploded and it was an implosion and a demolition is beyond ignorant. Look at the films, get a physics expert here from Yale, from Harvard, pick the school. It defies reason.
Why is it that when you ask any question about 9/11, you're immediately attacked?
I'm not attacking you.
You're not, but no, I'm speaking in general. I'm not saying you guys, but I've watched people get attacked. People have their credibility attacked. My problem is I look at it and I go, how can 2 planes knock down 3 buildings?
I don't believe in that boogeyman shit. They ain't doing shit. I don't believe in that shit. Well, if somebody want to do some shit to you, they doing it. Them motherfuckers ain't talking about it, sending you tapes. I'm gonna fuck you up when I see you. I'm from the projects. I know danger. I don't feel no danger from that shit.
You don't think Bin Laden knocked down the World Trade Center?
Absolutely not.
Come on.
I don't.
That's where you lose. That doesn't mean you're right.
That don't mean that.
That doesn't mean you're right.
It don't mean that it's not valid neither. Science, highly educated people in all areas of science have spoken on the fishiness around that whole 9/11 theory. It's like the magic bullet and all that shit.
And what happened?
No individual can save a nation. If a nation is sleepwalking and doesn't wake up, then it will never be safe. But an individual can be a catalyst, can be a cause to wake them up. And you have somebody, George Tenet, acknowledging in his book that he knew that the administration was deceiving the American people into a situation that is murdering young men and women from this country and others, that George Tenet and Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice and George Bush et al. Should be in fucking jail.
this is, we've had such poor leadership for so long in our country that we've got to get back to some strong leadership that believe the same principles we do. I have a 700-acre ranch in Texas, and I have a lot of guns on my ranch. I don't use them for hunting. I'm not a hunter. But the thing is, it's for protection.
On September 23rd of 2001, Condoleezza Rice held a news conference, and she stated, "We have definitive proof and evidence that links Osama bin Laden and the Taliban to the attacks on September 11th, and we will release this information in due time." At the date of this production, we're still waiting to see that evidence. In October of 2001, this video was released and shown to the people of America and the world, and we were all told that this was Osama bin Laden accepting responsibility for the attacks on September 11th. But let's compare the Osama in this video to a photograph of the known Osama. When you compare the two, you'll notice that the Osama in the video has a shorter nose. He also appears to be a little chubbier. As the Osama in the video waves his hand, look carefully. You'll see he's wearing a ring and a wristwatch. Jewelry is forbidden by people of the Islamic faith. You'll also notice that when he signs on this pad, he's signing with his right hand. We know that the real Osama was left-handed. So we have to ask this question: where did this video come from? And why was it fabricated to mislead the people of America and the world? If you visit the FBI.gov website, you'll find the 10 most wanted list. And on that list, of course, is Osama bin Laden. You can pull up his wanted poster, and on that poster is a list of charges that he's wanted for. The curious thing is that nowhere in the list of charges is any mention of September 11th. The Muckraker Report contacted Rex Toom, a spokesperson for the FBI, and asked why was there no mention of the attacks on September 11th on Osama's wanted poster. Mr. Toom's response was, "We have no hard evidence linking Osama bin Laden with the attacks on September 11th.
It's to restore America to our freedoms, restore America to our principles, and that is individual liberty and our Constitution and sound money.
Not what you expect to happen when you are waiting in line to go to a blockbuster movie. What's expected to be the blockbuster of the summer, and then this unfolds. The why, we don't know.
There's still time to turn back and wake up and commit to standing up against tyranny and just getting out of your programming, realizing there's a bigger system around you, that people are trying to manipulate you, that there are covert and overt agendas.
Here's what we know so far. A young man with no previous criminal record who was described by former neighbors, friends, and classmates to be a completely normal person had multiple guns, bombs, and buckets of ammunition stored in his apartment, and suddenly decided to dress in black and go to the premiere of a movie which has reached a massive level of popularity and randomly shoot people. This shooting comes just after the proposed UN gun ban that would abolish the Second Amendment rights of American citizens and that gained mainstream attention. This guy who has no previous criminal record decides to go into a crowded movie theater at the premiere of a huge box office hit and kill a bunch of people.
We must resist them. So step up to the plate. Look what we've turned into. Tortures of people's children in front of their parents, now admitted mainstream news. Banks robbing us and stealing. We're going into bondage to the elite who think of us as total scum.
It was a shootout scene. There were guns firing, and then loud bangs came from the right of the theater. Smoke took over the entire theater and everything, and it was really thick, and no one could really see anything. Me and my sister were sitting there wondering what was going on. 5 people that were limping, wounded, slightly bloody. The most that I saw was a girl who was pretty much covered in blood.
Hi everybody, this is Sheila Aliens. Today is January 21st, 2013. It would appear that CNN aired some fake footage of Sandy Hook and claimed that it was the live footage at the time of the shooting shortly after. They aired footage of what is actually the St. Rose Preschool, which is also in Sandy Hook / Newtown. And it shows some cops running through the parking lot of that school. But that's not Sandy Hook. That is St. Rose Preschool, which is close to Sandy Hook Elementary. And before you go blindly discounting this, you need to actually look for yourself on Google Maps. Look at Sandy Hook Elementary, look at St. Rose Preschool, and then look at the footage from CNN. And you'll reach the exact same conclusion. If you have any logical explanation, then go ahead and leave it in the comments, but it seems apparent that's what CNN did. Big surprise. I mean, it might be some B-roll footage that they had If so, they need to be called out on that, because that was BS of them to air that and make it appear to be part of the live footage when it's obviously not. That's a drill at a different school. So maybe they didn't have any helicopter footage at that time and they just wanted to be cool, but that is very deceptive on their part, and they got caught up.
This continues to be a very complex investigation, and there's a lot of contradictory information out there, but there is some new information this morning from a couple of federal officials and state officials. They say now that there were actually 4 handguns recovered inside the school, not just 2 as we were initially told. 4 handguns, and apparently only handguns, that were taken into the school. We knew that Adam Lanza, the man said to be the gunman here, also had a assault-style, AR-15 style rifle that he had taken to the school that was in the car he drove there, his mother's car. But we've been told by several officials that he left that in the car.
Everybody, death was caused by, everyone that we've completed so far was caused by gunshot wounds. All the wounds that I know of at this point were caused by the long weapon.
So the rifle was the primary weapon?
Yes.
You can see that police find a long gun of some type in the trunk of the black vehicle that's been cordoned off at the elementary school all day long today. It's entirely possible the car belongs to the shooting suspect. Police are seen clearing the gun's chamber. At least 1 cartridge comes out of the gun. This just shows there is still much to learn about what happened today, and police are still very much in the middle of what will surely be a lengthy investigation. But again, some type of long gun has just been found in the last half hour in the trunk of the black vehicle that's been currently taped off outside of Sandy Hook Elementary School. Back to you guys.
I'm calling the police.
Look at this smiling, happy family. See that shed in the background? That's supposed to be a half a mile away. But in this shot, it's very close, isn't it? That is a green screen, okay? This is a group of actors smiling. See, the wife and the husband, now they're smiling. It's Miller time. It's the end of the day. The green screen is still on, and they're headed home. Okay? This was not recorded on the same day. They are smiling and laughing and having a great old time. And behind them is the green screen that they haven't shut off yet. And I'm going to show you that I'm 100% correct on this. And by the way, no one can debunk this. You would have to be the Messiah himself to debunk this video. If you still think Sandy Hook wasn't a hoax after this video, then what can I tell you? There's something wrong with you. I mean, this is 100% proof. And in a couple of seconds, you're about to see Google Maps of the exact same spot. There's the corner. Okay? There it is. And there's the shed. What's the shed doing a mile away? Beautiful, isn't it? Can we call the press now? Can we arrest our president, our Congress, everything? Everybody in Congress and the White House and in Washington should be arrested. Okay? Your president's involved. You can clearly see that's the same exact spot. And if that's not enough proof for you, I'm going to give you a different video at the same corner with different people. Okay? For some reason, they like filming in that little corner. This is it. Debunk this. It's over. You don't have to watch another Sandy Hook hoax video. This should be the last video you'd ever want to see. Okay? Here we go. Same corner. You see the wood sticking over there? And the shed is it's in focus with the people, which is impossible. That is absolutely no way that's real. That's a green screen behind them. And they have the actors acting in front of the camera. You see? Beautiful acting. And the cars and the shed in the back are a green screen. Why they use the green screen, I don't know. Okay? See? Same shot. The shed right in the back. You cannot debunk this. Now what are you going to do? What are you going to do now? Huh? Everybody's trying to debunk my videos? Go ahead. Oh, I see. It's on wheels. The shed is on wheels. I didn't think of that. The shed must be on wheels. The whole entire structure, they just push it wherever they want it to go. Now I got it. So if they need the shed closer up, they push it, right? It's on wheels. Now I got it. Very good. You're right. 9/11 was an inside job. Sandy Hook was a hoax. Your government is in on it. Your president should be arrested. All congressmen should be arrested. Everybody in Washington should be arrested. Here's another camera shot. And where's the shed? Oh, the building you can't even put the building and the shed in the same picture. It's impossible. Look how far away that shed is. Now we're going to zoom in. Zoom in, zoom in. If you zoom in on the shed, the building is way back there, right? Okay. Sandy Hook was a hoax, my friends. Sandy Hook was a hoax. Arrest them.
Lara, I know that just a little bit you're going to tell us about your wardrobe malfunction at the wedding, Kim Kardashian's wedding, and then you had one a short time ago here. This is real. The green shirt you were wearing, and it just, yeah, you know, TV 101, my friend. You can't wear green. Do you see that?
Now that would have been a great segment.
Yeah, thanks.
No green on the green screen.
That's right.
What we do know is that in pursuit of Christopher Dorner, the Los Angeles Police Department has done a lot of bizarre stuff that's making some people ask questions, which I will relay to you. The stories are as follows. There are two different incidents here. One is Maggie Carranza, who's 47 years old, her mother, 71-year-old Emma Hernandez, who is being represented by attorney Christopher Driscoll, who says that it is 100% clear that the LAPD had no idea who was in the vehicle and just lit it up. This is, of course, referencing the incident where LAPD thought that they had a description of the suspect's vehicle and that they had found a vehicle that matched that description, and that they essentially started shooting at it. And the argument here is that the LAPD had no idea who was in the car. The car may have matched the description, but they had absolutely no idea who was in the vehicle, and that this is just completely outrageous. I'm sure we will see lawsuits. I'm sure we will see all sorts of stuff. Another similar incident involves David Perdue, who was on his way to sneak in some surfing before work on Thursday morning. When police flagged him down, they asked, "Who are you? Where are you going?" And then they sent him on his way. Now, only seconds later, according to Perdue's attorney, a Torrance police cruiser slammed into his pickup truck. Officers opened fire. None of the bullets struck Perdue, fortunately. And police later explained that his pickup truck matched the description of the one belonging to Christopher Dorner, the ex-cop who they have been pursuing. The pickups were different makes and different colors. And, of course, Perdue looks nothing like Dorner. He's several inches shorter, about 100 pounds lighter, and he's white, whereas here Dorner is black. So,
yeah.
Well, first of all, what do you think of this?
Well, I think in a situation like this, it becomes very clear that these police officers are not elite in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, that's one view.
Yeah.
Two women are in recovery Saturday after being shot by Los Angeles police. The officers say they mistook the women's truck for that of fugitive Christopher Dorner, wanted for 3 killings. Maggie Carranza and her 71-year-old mother, Emma Hernandez, were delivering newspapers around 5:15 a.m. Thursday when, without warning, police fired more than 50 shots at their vehicle. Carranza was struck in the hand and released from the hospital with minor injuries. Her mother was hit in the back and is still in intensive care. The officers say they mistook the 2 Hispanic women for 6-foot, 270-pound Christopher Dorner, a former L.A. cop on the run after promising to seek revenge on the police force that fired him 4 years ago. The cops were assigned to protect a high-level police official and stationed outside his home. They said they didn't realize until after firing shots that the vehicle they were targeting was an aqua blue Toyota Tacoma, not the gray Nissan Titan that belonged to Dorner. The Los Angeles Times reports the license plates were also different. The LAPD hasn't released the names of the officers who fired at the women without any visual confirmation, but they have been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Kay Cal in Los Angeles spoke to an attorney for the women.
The vehicle's a different color. The license plate doesn't match. And even if they had the person in question, Mr. Dorner, you still have to give him an opportunity to get out. You can't just start administering street justice.
The story has seen little coverage from national media, even as a similar incident happened that same day, when an officer rammed a truck he mistakenly believed to be Dorner's, then fired shots, narrowly missing the man. LAPD Chief Charlie Beck has labeled the shootings a case of mistaken identity by the officers. For Newsy, I'm Zach Toombs. Multiple sources, the real story.
economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some of the spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take the spring out of the step of the Easter Bunny this year.
I don't know about you, but I'm getting the feeling that economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year. But seriously, kudos to Conan O'Brien for once again exposing the media repeaters. Look, guys, obviously this is no coincidence. So the question remains, where are all these news stations getting their scripts from? Well, there are affiliate news services that supply packages and scripts to hundreds of stations around the country. Stations then have their anchors read the canned story with the generic script. Now, you might look at this and say it's just indicative of how lazy local news can be. But consider the implications of this kind of reporting for 1 second. Say it wasn't an Easter Bunny, and rather the story being mindlessly regurgitated was about a virus, a terrorist attack, or a report on war casualty counts. The bottom line is that people who watch the news tend to trust this information that then influences their perception and decisions. So for these anchors to ask no questions, do no fact-checking, and hold no differing interpretation of the news they're delivering is not only absurd, it's downright dangerous.
The Boston bombing was a horrific tragedy, and whoever was behind this event deserves to be brought to justice. Unfortunately, there's a great deal of evidence that indicates that this isn't going to happen. The mainstream media and government authorities are hiding the real story. In this video, we are going to demonstrate that at the very minimum, the authorities had prior knowledge of the attack and allowed it to happen. Now, the first anomaly that surfaced immediately after the bombing was an eyewitness account indicating that there were government agents on the scene and on the roof right before the blast. This eyewitness account can be confirmed by looking at photographic evidence before and after the event. There are pictures clearly showing someone on the roof and several men wearing identical pants, boots, and shirts and listening to communications through devices in their ears. These men were positioned right next to the blast zone, then later moved across the street just before the bomb went off. These same men were then seen communicating with authorities after the explosion. One photo shows one of these men walking around on the scene with an unidentified device. Another shows someone crouching next to a backpack in a doorway. This photographic evidence opens up another can of worms because these uniforms match the dress code of a private security company called Kraft International. And in one of the photos, a logo can be seen on one of their hats that seems to match the Kraft International logo. Neither the mainstream media nor government officials have made any mention of the contractors. And when government officials were confronted, they refused to answer the question.
Next question, please. Next question, please. Yes.
So there's a lot more evidence of a cover-up that we aren't even going to touch here because it would open up way too many tangents. If you do a little research on your own, you'll find plenty of information. Just what we showed here clearly indicates that the Sarnoff brothers weren't acting alone if they were indeed involved in the bombing. However, their parents have come forward stating that their sons had been in contact with the FBI for years and that they were framed by the US government. There are also serious questions concerning the death of the older brother. The mainstream media released this footage of someone closely resembling him being placed under arrest, alive and well. Yet shortly after, it was reported that he was killed in a shootout. Just like in the Dorner case, it seems like someone didn't want these men to get the chance to stand trial. Of course, the authorities haven't commented on this at all. What really happened? Well, we won't know unless there's a real investigation, which at this point seems highly unlikely.
Whoa. Are you trying to say that the government was involved in a plot to kill and injure its own citizens? That's crazy talk.
Really, you think so? Funny, Ted Gunderson, a former FBI chief, has a different point of view.
Look at the terrorist acts that have occurred. The CIA behind most, if not all of them. We had the Marine barracks. We had our embassy in Kenya. We had Pan Am 103. We had the USS Cole. We had Oklahoma City. We had the World Trade Center in 1993.
So if this event was engineered by the government or intentionally allowed to happen, what's the motive? Well, let's look at how the government responded. Just 2 days after the attack, Senator Lautenberg announced he was going to reintroduce legislation requiring background checks for the sale of gunpowder. And as we warned in a previous video, while everyone was distracted by these events, they passed the CISPA internet bill in the House. Now it just has to go through the Senate. Also under this cover, the president signed a law called S-716, which basically gutted the Stock Act, which was intended to make it harder for the legislative and executive branches from engaging in insider trading. The media distraction conveniently kept the attention off of this. However, the most disturbing aspect of this situation is the way they used it to roll out martial law on the streets, using the exact armored vehicles we had exposed in a previous video entitled Government Preparing for a Collapse, and not in a nice way. We saw these militarized SWAT teams searching from house to house with no warrants. The streets looked like a war zone. This was a further extension of the abuses we saw in the Dorner case. What they are doing right now is conditioning the American people for police state justice, where suspects are hunted down by paramilitary forces which break down people's doors at will, and where suspects are mysteriously killed without getting a chance to stand trial. This is what the NDAA looks like, people. They didn't make these laws for nothing, and what we're seeing is just the beginning. Make no mistake, the people who are really behind this event aren't going to stop. There's more to come, and the violations of your rights are going to become more and more blatant. The powers that be are building up to something big. I don't pretend to know what that event is, and I don't pretend to know when it's going to happen. But I will say this, if we allow them to get away with this now, eventually these scenes that we saw in Watertown are going to be directed at political dissidents. All of the signs that your government is preparing for a full police state crackdown are right in front of your eyes. We've shown in previous videos how the government is buying up billions of rounds of hollow point ammunition, setting up plans and training employees for military detention camps for US citizens, and buying up thousands of military-grade armored vehicles like we saw being deployed in Watertown. I understand that this is extreme, and that some of you may be hesitant to share this information with others. But if you see what's at stake here, then you have the responsibility to do everything in your power to wake people up. The embarrassment you may feel when someone calls you a conspiracy theorist or something along those lines is nothing compared to the consequences of allowing these criminals to proceed unhindered. Please make a commitment to reach out to as many people as you can, especially the police, the military, and the DHS. There are good men and women in these organizations. We've got to get their attention. We've got to help them realize where this is going. If we fail, in the not too distant future, you're going to wake up and realize that you're living in a full-out military dictatorship. And when that day comes, it's going to be too late. If you'd like more content like this, please subscribe to this channel, Stormclouds Gathering on YouTube. For updates and bonus content, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/StormcloudsGathering, on Twitter at Collapse Updates, and our website, stormcloudsgathering.com.
We would be crazy to believe what known liars are telling us over and over again.
Zielbereich verletzt. Die Profis hatten den Wettkampf längst Zielbereich verletzt. Die Profis hatten den Wettkampf längst beendet und die Amateurläufer kamen ins Ziel, als sich das Sportfest in eine
That runner who you're describing fell in front of me, and then the Boston police officers that were near him started drawing their guns. It was just a panic on people's faces, and nobody knew exactly what was going on. I don't think at first people realized that it was a real explosion.
Are injured. We have reports. Not what we see is windows that are blown out and people who are injured who came from behind those glass walls. And people who are injured who came from behind those glass walls.
Well, this next story is very powerful, but I've got to warn you, the images are also very graphic. You're about to meet some incredibly brave people. They're amputees doing work only they can do, training men and women in uniform. Here's our Poppy Harlow.
On this simulated battlefield, it's hard to determine what's real and what's not.
We call it hyper-realistic.
Kit Lavelle served in Vietnam and now runs Strategic Operations, a movie set turned training ground, preparing thousands of U.S. servicemen and women for combat.
Individuals who are going through the training here are not expecting to see an amputee. So the shock effect of seeing that happen is priceless.
The action is fake, but the amputees are real. They're actors with a unique perspective on what others would consider a disability.
It's more of a gift. I need to share it with people. You think this is a gift? It is a gift.
Heather Morales lost her right leg to cancer when she was just 8.
Yeah, just, you can come up. I just wanted
Ted and June DeStefano both lost their left leg in a tragic accident.
A car came around the corner too fast and hit us. It's a trauma that's been changed, that can change other people's lives as well as my own. It's become an asset.
I went through similar training here recently, and it's as real as it gets. It's preparation that we do as journalists before we go into a hostile environment. And when I was working myself on these amputee actors, it's what made me really want to tell their story.
Yeah, well, I've met people that have already gone through the training and have gone overseas and come back and say that the training helped me.
Really?
Yeah, those are the best. When they come back and say you made a difference, those are amazing.
Having amputee actors, what does that add to this? What does that mean?
Complete realism, because it actually is more realistic, and it gives them that firsthand knowledge of what to do in case of a casualty.
Most importantly, it takes away the shock.
Personally, haven't been there. It means so much big difference to actually working with these people to actually simulate with real-life combat.
Personally, I would say thank you, because they're putting out for the military personnel new experience that we need to save lives.
You can see it in their eyes that it's really affecting them.
Do they cry?
Oh, yeah.
You've had servicemen and women in training cry seeing you.
Yes, I have.
Do you cry?
Absolutely.
For the amputees, what could be traumatic is far from it. What is it for you?
It's healing.
And it's personal. Ted served in the Navy for 21 years.
I look at the men and women, and some of them are sons and daughters and fathers and mothers.
That's someone's child that's out there.
Heather's husband also served, and she'll never forget the day a 3-star general approached her.
So he came up to me and thank you. Me?
Was that the moment when you realized the purpose of what you were doing?
Yeah. That's when I realized that this isn't just, a regular job. My goal is to make it so that someone comes home at night to their families. That's my ultimate goal.
When you go home at night and lay your head on the pillow and know that you have the ability to change someone's life, it's priceless.
A dose of perspective for all of us. Poppy Harlow, CNN, San Diego.
I'm sure that We'll go to Bush's first. They go all the way around the... Oh, yeah, they're probably just going to let that. I'm sure they're...
Why did the United States attack Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Yemen? Why are U.S. operatives helping to destabilize Syria? And why is the United States government so intent on taking down Iran, in spite of the fact that Iran has not attacked any country since 1798? And what's next? What are we headed for? When you look at the current trajectory that we're on, it doesn't make any sense at all if you evaluate it based on what we're taught in school. And it doesn't make any sense if you base your worldview on the propaganda that the mainstream media tries to pass off as news. But it makes perfect sense once you know the real motives of the powers that be. In order to understand those motives, we first have to take a look at history. In 1945, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world reserve currency, which meant that international commodities were priced in dollars. The agreement, which gave the United States a distinct financial advantage, was made under the condition that those dollars would remain redeemable for gold at a consistent rate of $35 per ounce. The United States promised not to print very much money, but this was on the honor system, because the Federal Reserve refused to allow any audits or supervision of its printing presses. In the years leading up to 1970, expenditures in the Vietnam War made it clear to many countries that the U.S. was printing far more money than it had in gold. And in response, they began to ask for their gold back. This, of course, set off a rapid decline in the value of the dollar. The situation climaxed in 1971 when France attempted to withdraw its gold and Nixon refused. On August 15th, he made the following announcement.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
This was obviously not a temporary suspension, as he claimed, but rather a permanent default. And for the rest of the world who had entrusted the United States with their gold, it was outright theft. In 1973, President Nixon asked King Faisal of Saudi Arabia to accept only U.S. dollars as payment for oil and to invest any excess profits in U.S. Treasury bonds, notes, and bills. In return, Nixon offered military protection for Saudi oil fields. The same offer was extended to each of the world's key oil-producing countries, and by 1975, every member of OPEC had agreed to only sell their oil in U.S. dollars. The act of moving the dollar off of gold and tying it to foreign oil instantly forced every oil-importing country in the world to start maintaining a constant supply of Federal Reserve paper. And in order to get that paper, they would have to send real physical goods to America. This was the birth of the petrodollar. Paper went out, everything America needed came in, and the United States got very, very rich as a result. It was the largest financial con in recorded history. The arms race of the Cold War was a game of poker. Military expenditures were the chips, and the U.S. had an endless supply of chips. With the petrodollar under its belt, it was able to raise the stakes higher and higher, outspending every other country on the planet, until eventually U.S. military expenditures surpassed that of all other nations in the world combined. The Soviet Union never had a chance. The collapse of the communist bloc in 1991 removed the last counterbalance to American military might, The United States was now an undisputed superpower with no rival. Many hoped that this would mark the beginning of a new era of peace and stability. Unfortunately, there were those in high places who had other ideas. Within that same year, the U.S. invaded Iraq in the first Gulf War. And after crushing the Iraqi military and destroying their infrastructure, including water purification plants and hospitals, crippling sanctions were imposed which prevented that infrastructure from being rebuilt. These sanctions, which were initiated by Bush Sr. and sustained throughout the entire Clinton administration, lasted for over a decade and were estimated to have killed over 500,000 children. The Clinton administration was fully aware of these figures.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Miss Albright, what exactly was it that was worth killing 500,000 kids for? In November of 2000, Iraq began selling its oil exclusively in euros. This was a direct attack on the dollar and on U.S. financial dominance, and it wasn't going to be tolerated. In response, the U.S. government, with the assistance of the mainstream media, began to build up a massive propaganda campaign claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and was planning to use them. In 2003, the U.S. invaded, and once they had control of the country, oil sales were immediately switched back to dollars. This is particularly notable due to the fact that switching back to the dollar meant a 15 to 20% loss in revenue due to the euro's higher value. It doesn't make any sense at all unless you take the petrodollar into account.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Let's take a look at the events of the past decade and see if you see a pattern. In Libya, Gaddafi was in the process of organizing a bloc of African countries to create a gold-based currency called the dinar, which they intended to use to replace the dollar in that region. US and NATO forces helped destabilize and topple the Libyan government in 2011, and after taking control of the region, US armed rebels executed Gaddafi in cold blood and immediately set up the Libyan Central Bank. Iran has been actively campaigning to pull oil sales off of the dollar for some time now, and it has recently secured agreements to begin trading its oil in exchange for gold. In response, the U.S. government, with mainstream media assistance, has been attempting to build international support for military strikes on the pretext of preventing Iran from building a nuclear weapon. In the meantime, they established sanctions which U.S. officials openly admit are aimed at causing a collapse of the Iranian economy. Syria is Iran's closest ally, and they are bound by mutual defense agreements. The country is currently in the process of being destabilized with covert assistance from NATO, and though Russia and China have warned the United States not to get involved, the White House has made statements within the past month indicating that they are considering military intervention. It should be clear that military intervention in Syria and Iran isn't being considered. It's a foregone conclusion, just as it was in Iraq and Libya. The U.S. is actively working to create the context which gives them the diplomatic cover to do what they already have planned. The motive for these invasions and covert actions becomes clear when we look at them in their full context and connect the dots. Those who control the United States understand that even if a few countries begin to sell their oil in another currency, it will set off a chain reaction and the dollar will collapse. They understand that there is absolutely nothing else holding up the value of the dollar at this point, and so does the rest of the world. But rather than accepting the fact that the dollar is nearing the end of its lifespan, the powers that be have made a calculated gambit. They have decided to use the brute force of the U.S. military to crush each and every resistant state in the Middle East and Africa. That in itself would be bad enough, but what you need to understand is that this is not going to end with Iran. China and Russia have stated publicly, and on no uncertain terms, that they will not tolerate an attack on Iran or Syria. Iran is one of their key allies, one of the last independent oil producers in the region, and they understand that if Iran falls, then they will have no way to escape the dollar without going to war. And yet the United States is pushing forward in spite of the warnings. What we are witnessing here is a trajectory that leads straight to the unthinkable. It's a trajectory that was mapped out years ago and full awareness of the human consequences. But who was it that put us on this course? What kind of psychopath is willing to intentionally set off a global conflict that will lead to millions of deaths just to protect the value of a paper currency? It obviously isn't the president. The decision to invade Libya, Syria, and Iran was made long before Obama had risen to the national spotlight. And yet, he's carrying out his duty just like the puppets that preceded him. So who is it that pulls the strings? Often the best answer to questions like this are found by asking another question. Qui bono? Who benefits? Obviously, those who have the power to print the dollar out of thin air have the most to lose if the dollar were to fall. And since 1913, that power has been held by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a private entity owned by a conglomerate of the most powerful banks in the world. And the men who control those banks are the ones who pull the strings. To them, this is just a game. Your life and the lives of those you love are just pawns on their chessboard. And like a spoiled 4-year-old who tips the board onto the floor when they start to lose, the powers that be are willing to start World War III to keep control of the global financial system. Remember that when these wars extend and accelerate. Remember that when your son or your neighbor's son comes back home in a flag-draped coffin. Remember that when they point the finger at the new boogeyman. Because the madmen who are running this show will take this as far as you allow them to. So how much time do we have left? It's a question I hear constantly, but it's the wrong question. Asking how much time we have left is a passive posture. It's the attitude of a prisoner who's waiting to be taken out to a ditch and shot in the back of the head. What are our chances? Can we change course? Also the wrong question. The odds don't matter anymore. If you understand what we're facing, then you have a moral responsibility to do everything in your power to alter the course that we're on, regardless of the odds. It's only when you stop basing your involvement on the chances of success that success actually becomes possible. To strip the ill-begotten power from the financial elites and to bring these criminal cartels to justice will require nothing less than a revolution. The government is not going to save us. The government is completely infiltrated and corrupt to the core. Looking to them for a solution at this point is utterly naive. There are 3 stages of revolution, and they are sequential. Stage 1 is already underway. Stage 1 is the ideological resistance. In this stage, we have to actively work to wake up as many people as possible about what is happening and the direction we're headed. All revolutions originate from a shift in the mindset of the population, and no other meaningful resistance is possible without it. Success in this stage of the game can be measured by the contagion of ideas. When an idea reaches critical mass, it begins to spread on its own and seeps into all levels of society. In order to achieve that contagion, we need more people in this fight. We need more people speaking out, making videos, writing articles, getting this information onto the national and international stage. And we especially need to reach the police and the military. Stage 2 is civil disobedience, also known as nonviolent resistance. In this stage, you put your money where your mouth is, or more accurately, you withhold your money and your obedience from the government, and you do everything in your power to bring the gears of the state to a halt. Practiced in mass, this method alone is often enough to bring a regime to its knees. However, if you fail at this stage, Stage 3 is inevitable. Stage 3 is direct physical resistance. Direct physical resistance is the last resort, and it should be avoided and delayed as long as possible. And it should only be invoked after all other options have been thoroughly exhausted. There are those who talk tough and claim that they will resist when the time comes. But what those people fail to realize is that if you are inactive during the first 2 stages and save your efforts for the last resistance, then you will fail. When the Nazis were moving door to door, dragging people out of their homes in Germany, that was the time to fight back physically. But due to the lack of ideological resistance and civil disobedience leading up to that moment, even an armed uprising would have likely failed at that point. An armed uprising can only succeed if the people have established an attitude of active resistance. And active resistance is only possible after their minds have broken free from the mainstream propaganda. If you want to fight back, it's now or never. You're not going to get another chance, and the stakes are far higher than they were in Nazi Germany.
final threat von Braun revealed was going to be a fake alien invasion actually done by the cabal Illuminati, who have anti-gravity craft and very advanced weapon systems. Your tax dollars have gone into Star Wars weapons, nuclear particle beam, killer lasers, and stuff much more exotic than that. And they are quite capable of fielding a fleets of anti-gravity craft armed to the teeth with these exotic weapons and look all through the world like an alien invasion, like the stuff in video games or B movies. And their purpose of doing this is to scare the bejesus out of people so that they kowtow when big boys in their puppet presidents of various countries say, we have a global emergency, we need to declare global martial law, you need to cede all power to us, emergency powers. We've already been through the drill on a U.S. level. Extrapolate that to the entire planet, and you have their wet dream of how they hope it will come down as a result of this fake alien war filling up our sky.
If these large triangular-shaped objects are any indication, then they're getting pretty close to their plan.
Well, there's certainly plenty of stuff in the air. That very large triangle over Stephenville, Texas, is an example of a cabal anti-gravity craft being piloted by a hybrid clone that has some captured star visitor genes grafted onto a human. And this craft operates in a interface between the mental field of the pilot and the mental field of the artificial intelligence system of the craft. This stuff is Star Wars-y, decades ahead of anything in the unclassified world. This stuff is operational, real, and armed, and they're quite capable of doing it today, tomorrow, months from now. I have information from my my psychic team, who's overheard some of the planning, that the plans are to do this before the election, before November 4. They are not happy with things that are not going their way. A lot of the plans they had are starting to fall apart. Some of the people who followed what I've been putting on my mailing list, emailing list, are aware of various operations where some of the loyal, behind-the-scenes military intelligence units and some of our psychic folks have worked together to take down some of their installations. They've lost a lot of key personnel. Their plan is to escalate to this level very rapidly before they can lose any more opportunity.
So you're saying just months away then, Richard?
That's their plan. If Star Nations has said that if they do a flat-out global war and start shooting up a bunch of countries and killing lots of people, that Star Nations will step in and stop that. But these guys are prepared to do that and will start to crank it up unless we can either out them and take away their advanced toys, or Star Nation has to step in and stop them and abort them in mid-flight, as it were.
First, your advice is stay inside, don't drink or eat anything.
Are there terrorists in your neighborhood? So bombs, spewing toxic gas, radiation. Is America ready?
Is the U.S. next?
Is America
Doomsday 2000? The terror threat, the superbug, global pandemic. aliens, government fiction, right-wing terrorism, evangelical Christianity, gay marriage, death bells, the flip-flop, indoctrination, militia, anarchy, chaos, and cannibalism. Gosh,
we better wake up soon. Or we're gonna wake up dead.
The war on terrorism is nothing but a grotesque lie. Anytime you hear the war on terror, know that the people saying it are lying or they're dupes or whatever they are, but it's just a total gigantic lie.
He's been charged with attempted use of a weapon of mass destruction.
The van that he thought was blowing up carried 6 55-gallon drums with detonation cords and plastic caps. But 6 55-gallon drums with detonation cords and plastic caps. But all of that supplied by undercover agents.
Our federal authorities were all over this from the very beginning, which goes all the way back to last June, and they were with this young man every step of the way.
So over the 18 months, they cultivated him.
The FBI had been conducting an undercover operation. Authorities then supplied the team with fake explosives.
Known cases of a false flag op was carried out by the newly elected Adolf Hitler on February 27, 1933. Nazi documents uncovered at the end of World War II, as well as testimony during the Nuremberg trials, revealed what many historians already suspected, that Hermann Göring had set fire to the Reichstag, the German parliament building.
The government assumes the right to intervene in any situation to restore order. The right to draft laws passes from the Reichspräsident to Chancellor. I offer the Reichstag the chance for peace in Germany. Never! If you respect our constitution... The Vice Chancellor, please return to his seat. I will take any refusal as a statement of opposition. Gentlemen, you must decide. Will it be peace or war?
In the early 1960s, the federal government needed a pretext to invade Cuba.
The Pentagon had an operation called Operation Northwoods, and it was on the table that our military would attack certain cities within the United States and make it look like Cuba did it to justify an invasion of Cuba.
And the idea was to have U.S. personnel from the CIA and other places secretly create terrorism in the United States. The documents actually said people would be shot on American streets, bombs would be blown up. And again, all this, the evidence would be laid to point the finger at Castro.
The federal government proposed blowing up airliners full of Americans, saying the casualty list in U.S. newspapers would cause a helpful wave of indignation. Plan, they elaborated on how they could bomb Washington, D.C. and blame it on Cuba. attack Marines at Guantanamo Bay using U.S. Army soldiers dressed up as Cubans. Or they said, just like the sinking of the Maine to get into the Spanish-American War, we could blow up a ship again. Here they are admitting the problem-reaction solution system and how effective it is to motivate the American people to get them behind a war.
Are you a conspiracy theorist?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you why.
Here, speak a little closer.
Okay, I'll tell you why. Because my government in my 58 years has lied to me so often they have no credibility. The last time was 2004 when I was teaching at Harvard. McNamara comes through and now admits the Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. 58,000 of my generation killed in Vietnam, 1 million Vietnamese over an event that never happened, apparently. My government's never lied to me, have they? Let's see, where should we start? The Gulf of Tonkin incident? Now that took us into war in Vietnam. They've now admitted it was a lie. So 58,000 of my generation were killed based upon a lie. But that doesn't count, does it?
What does that have to do with 9/11?
That shows that we will lie to go to war. We've been doing it for years. We will continue to do it. I remember our president sitting on TV telling us our boys are floating in the water.
And because of that, you'll never believe it. And because of that, you'll never believe it.
But they lie all the time.
On February 23rd, 1993, a bomb went off beneath the two towers of the World Trade Center. The bomb was in a truck on a timed device in level B2 of the garage. The explosion went 7 stories up, killing 6 people and injuring more than 1,000.
Unlike the Northwoods plan, the FBI actually carried out the attack on the World Trade Center in 1993. They actually hired a retired 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer, Ahmad Salam, and paid him $1 million and gave him real explosives, a detonator, and told him to build a bomb and to give it to the foolish people that he was controlling to allow them to attack the World Trade Center complex.
The Independent reported that several of the bombers were trained by the CIA to fight in the Afghan war, and that the CIA admitted partial responsibility for the bombings.
The federal building is gone, all fours to the roof.
April 19th, 1995, in downtown Oklahoma City, multiple bombs ripped through the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. And as usual, federal fingerprints were all over this tragic event. Then President Bill Clinton, taking his orders from on high from the New World Order chieftains, needed a crisis to get his gun control agenda through, as well as his plans for a socialized America. Taking a page out of the Strongmen's Handbook, Bill Clinton knew that a crisis of this magnitude, endless images of mangled children, would pull on the heartstrings of the American people, and they would beg for the Anti-Terrorism Effective Death Penalty Act that he had failed to pass just a year before. The bill absolutely eviscerated massive sections of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
And the idea was to have U.S. personnel from the CIA and other places secretly create terrorism in the United States. The documents actually said people would be shot on American streets, bombs would be blown up.
Saying the casualty list in U.S. newspapers would cause a helpful wave of indignation.
no warning signs that I'm aware of.
And it was a revelation that the White House had no intention of making public.
President Bush was told in August that Osama bin Laden might be planning an attack involving the hijacking.
Could have predicted.
Nobody in our government, at least.
August 6th, PDD.
I believe the title was Bin Laden Determined to Attack Inside the United States.
70% of family members' questions were never answered during the 9/11 Commission report.
Lee Hamilton and Thomas Keane said they were set up to fail.
I mean, I'm a member of the commission. It's a scam. It's absolutely disgusting.
655,000 Iraqi civilians are dead. Who are the terrorists?
The smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull. And then we watched the building collapse.
In every case of terror I've ever seen, it's completely staged. It's either provocateur or there aren't even terrorists involved, and you've got CIA black ops literally with imploder plungers running the...
In the end, everybody will be locked into a monitored control grid where every single action you perform is documented. And if you get out of line, they can just turn off your chip. For at that point in time, every single aspect of society will revolve around interactions with the chips. This is the picture that is painted for the future if you open your eyes to see it. A centralized one-world economy where everyone's moves and everyone's transactions are tracked and monitored, all rights removed. The most incredible aspect of all. These totalitarian elements will not be forced upon the people. The people will demand them. For the social manipulation of society through the generation of fear and division has completely detached humans from their sense of power and reality. A process which has been going on for centuries, if not millennia.
When our forefathers wrote the Constitution with the right to bear arms, it was not about hunting and fishing because, wait. Because back then, if you didn't hunt or fish, you didn't eat. The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is there so that we, the public, if our government gets out of control, we have the ability to rise up and change it. And just because we believe in that amendment does not make us fools. It does not make us gun-crazy people. There's a reason they put that in there. And as I said, the reason is so we have the ability. Now, many people have said to me, well, wait a minute. How could we, the citizens, ever stand up to the U.S. government and their entire military might? Well, wait a minute. I got the answer. We threw everything we had at Vietnam, and they were nothing but a bunch of farmers with a few AK-47s, and they withstood it all. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't ever, ever let them take our rights. The hell with this Patriot Act.
For the second time in less than 2 weeks, the FBI says it has nabbed a homegrown terrorist in a successful sting operation. They've arrested 21-year-old Antonio Martinez, a naturalized citizen who goes by the name of Mohammed Hussein. They've charged him with trying to bomb this military recruitment center just west of Baltimore, Maryland. Authorities say Martinez parked an SUV containing a fake bomb provided by the FBI in front of the recruiting center. After an FBI informant picked up Martinez and drove him to a nearby vantage point, authorities say he tried to detonate the dummy explosive. Provided by the FBI, he told an FBI informant he thought about nothing but jihad.
It's scary to go everywhere.
The other hand, the FBI did catch him.
Yeah, this time. But how many more is out there that they're not catching?